Hello and welcome back in, ladies and gentlemen, to a very special episode of the College Sports Hive. That's Leif, I'm Scott. We are here with you. This will be Monday morning to talk NCAA National Championship for basketball. It's been a long ride. It's been a really good couple months covering college basketball. I've been much more invested in college basketball this year than I have been in a lot of years prior because of this. So I'm very thankful for that. And we've reached a culminating point. We have the two best teams going at it in the championship game. Anyone who could have scripted a championship game couldn't have drawn it up any better for 2021. It's been such an unbelievably difficult year for a lot of these players, a lot of these programs. So this national champion will be, in my eyes, the most deserving champion to ever be crowned in college sports. I said the same thing about football. And to go through everything that these athletes have had to go through on a weekly basis of daily testing, of living in fear of if I get COVID-19, I'm going to expose my entire team. Just can't really put it into words as to what some of these athletes have gone through this year. But this is the matchup that everyone wanted to see. We said that in last episode a lot. The number one seed in the tournament versus the number 2 seed in the tournament. They're both 1 seeds. Gonzaga has been a stalwart as the number 1 team in the country for so long now, all year. Baylor was number 2 for all year long, despite a week where they were coming off of COVID and lost twice, and Michigan overtook them. But that didn't last for very long. And then, this is the national championship that we have all wanted to see all year long. Gonzaga is favored by 4.5 points. That is the line as of right now. I think that's pretty fair. I think that's a reasonable starting point. And I think, what are your thoughts on that? Do you think that's high? Do you think that's low? Do you think that's accurate?
I think it's got to be somewhere around there. I could see it going down to 3, but I think you have to favor Gonzaga based off record. They're the top seed. They're unblemished. But I don't know. Something feels interesting about this where they go off that game where it could provide momentum. It could do other things, but it feels like there was a chink in their armor exposed, whereas Baylor looked really, really strong in their last game. So I know that's recency bias, but it factors into my head about it. So 4.5 doesn't feel like enormous, but it feels like a substantial amount, whereas the difference between the teams doesn't feel that substantial, at least in my mind.
There's been a lot of great national championships in the years past. We referenced the Villanova UNC national championship in our last episode with the Jenkins 3-point winner from Archidiakono to stun North Carolina after a crazy shot by Marcus Page. We referenced that into consideration of the game that just happened between Gonzaga and UCLA. But I think you would have to go all the way back to 2005 until you would reach a matchup where you have the 2 odds-on best teams in the nation going at it for the championship. And 2005 was North Carolina versus Illinois. Talk to me about what kind of transpired there and some of your thoughts as to why that matchup is similar to what we're going to see unfold tonight.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that this is the most anticipated one. I think there's been other times where maybe the top 2 teams have played one another, but this one is like there's a clear distinction. And we've said that all year, and we got what we asked for. And I think the similarities between this game and that game are extremely there's a few of them, and there's a few that are almost concerning for one side of the story the narrative plays. Illinois entered that game at 37-1, and North Carolina was 32-4. You'll notice that's a few more games than we've got this year. That there was no COVID pauses. There was some more conference tournament games played, of course. North Carolina won 75-70. That was a great game where it was a 3-point game at the end, and Darren Williams, who was the number 3 pick, battled against Raymond Felton, who was the number 5 pick. That's the last time there have been 2 point guards playing in the national championship game that have both been lottery picks. Presumably this year, Jalen Suggs and Davion Mitchell will both be lottery picks. There's been a lot of championships in between, and none have had 2 point guards battle off against each other. There's been a few notable ones I mentioned in our document. Peyton Siva was a great player against Trey Burke. Siva was not drafted as a lottery pick, and Trey Burke was. And then we've had Derrick Rose and Mario Chalmers in 2008. But this one, you go in with one team that looks like a generational team in Gonzaga, and you go in with another team that is loaded with NBA talent. North Carolina also on that team had Rashad McCants, had Sean May, and was able to pull the upset as a great team. And I think there's some very real similarities between these two, and it's the most anticipated, where the two clear-cut best teams are playing against one another, and hopefully we get another thriller in this one.
It's going to be really fun, and I think one of the interesting notes that we've made that we're going to bring up here is Gonzaga is coming off of a thriller. Like, they are just coming off of that game-winning 3 in overtime by Jalen Suggs to get past UCLA, who gave them everything that they could handle in that game. This is a chance now. They're continuing on to the national championship. They have a chance to go undefeated on their season. A lot of these storylines have been talked about, but an interesting question that you've posed on this document is, does that game-winning shot, that sort of high that they got from that, like, that you have to be taken to a certain level there of being like, oh my gosh, this was so sick. Does that help them or hurt them in this? And I guess I'll let you start, and then I'll offer some of my thoughts as well.
To be honest, I'm not sure. I think maybe if there are fans, that might help more. I think there was a certain euphoria that comes with a game winner, regardless of how many people are there. But it's certainly different than if there was a full house. Like, if you hit that game winner and there's a full house, and then now everyone's like, wow, look at that. Like, that's the team that hit that. We want them to win. That the fans matter. There's a reason there's home court advantage in a lot of events, like where you're like, well, I'm going to factor a few points into the spread because it's on the road, something like that. And I think in this case that euphoria carries them over, but I think it's a sense of relief almost for Gonzaga. And that's a scary thing, because they were the Goliath that escaped the David, and they were able to get through. And it's almost like, oh my God, like, thank goodness we're here. More so than the euphoria of winning the game winner. So in my eyes, I think it actually hurts them. But I think Mark Few will have his troops ready to go regardless. I think they're a mentally tough bunch. I think they're an experienced bunch, but I don't think the momentum of hitting that shot is going to do anything differently, other than the fact that they're there. And if he hadn't hit that, there's a chance they wouldn't be there.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I kind of agree with that, but also it's such a quick turnaround. Like, this happened Saturday night, and now they're here on 2 days later on a Monday to play the biggest game of any of their lives. And so from that point in time, like, that sort of quick turnaround is massive. And so I know for me personally, that would be draining. It would be draining to kind of have that emotional ride. And I don't know what their Sunday looked like, how well they practiced or things like that, because I'm sure there was some sort of things that had to happen. And also, you're going to just lace them up and do it all again 2 days later against a really, really good Baylor team. So I think it will weigh in a little bit. I just don't know how it will affect them positively or negatively. I think if it were to be, say, the way that kind of college football happens, where they have these semifinal games and there's a week to recover and then you play it next weekend, I don't think it would factor in at all. But just because they're playing 2 days after the fact that it happened, that's still a ride. And I mean, the teams have been through this the entirety of this tournament so far. Like, you play the first and second round in a weekend. You play the Sweet 16 and the Elite 8 in a weekend. And so quick turnarounds they're used to that by now, but also this is a different level. This is a different beast when you're playing for a national championship. Those motions weigh a little harder on people. And it's an interesting point to make. And so I would not be surprised to see Gonzaga a little bit sluggish at the start, if that would be, and I think that would be the only real lingering effect. I think they'll get it going. Their adrenaline will kick up and they'll get going. But like, and in any sort of big spot like this, I think offense is oftentimes slow to come by in some of these massive scenarios. So I guess that's a long-winded way of saying I don't think this will be as high of scoring as some of the other potential matchups. I think if we saw this in the regular season, it would be like 90-something to 90-something. But like, now I think it'll be like 70-something, 70-something, maybe. I don't know. We'll get there in a bit, but I think that's a really interesting point to bring up. And any other thoughts that may come to your mind there?
I don't think they'll lack for points, but I do think that you're right, that like a game 7 usually, this is what essentially it is. It's win or go home. They usually are defensively oriented. I think that I mean, Gonzaga scores over 90 a game, and then Baylor in their own right is exceptional offensively. Um, I'm very curious to see what the pace of this game is early, because both teams have the athletes to run and gun, but I think that favors Gonzaga. And if Baylor's going to step on the throttle early, and like we may have assumed that Gonzaga could struggle out of the gates, I'm not sure they will. But if that were to happen, you'd assume that would play into Gonzaga's hands down the road, because usually, like, if you're going to get out early, that means you're going to get some transition buckets. Like when they played Arkansas, they're up in a flash 15-2. When they played Houston, took a little bit longer, but not too long, and then they were up by 10, 15 points by mid first half. In Baylor's case, so yeah, I'm curious to see the pace and how Gonzaga comes out, because they're playing for an undefeated season. I think that's another thing that factors in is just added pressure. I mean, it's already a national championship game, but also Baylor very easily could have been undefeated. And that I really wish they could have been, for this to be like both teams are under the same pressure. But I think because they have a blemished record, that might help Baylor to start.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that as well. Let's talk Baylor, though. They're 27-2 on their year so far. They're second overall in Ken Palm efficiency, second on offense, and 27th on defense. So this is a team that scores around 83-ish points per game, 82.8. They're sixth in the country in that field. One of the ones that'll really, really jump off the page for me, and it always has, and I don't think it's talked about enough, is that as a team, and all this is everybody included, they shoot 41.2% from three. That is leading the country. Let's talk that first, and sort of your thoughts on how that could impact the game moving forward with Baylor.
Oh yeah, that's huge. And Baylor hasn't shot particularly well in this tournament, and they're still in the championship game. And they shot well for the first time against an elite defense in Houston. They haven't shot to their average in the tournament until yesterday. And I mean, what better time to do so in a championship game? Every game in today's era is now like, wow, you need to shoot well from three. But I think it's especially important for Baylor in this matchup against Gonzaga, because that is a clear-cut advantage for Baylor, that they shoot the ball extremely well from three. They pass well. They get a lot of drive and kick looks. And if they're able to hit some threes, I think that they have a really good chance to win this game. And that's what I put as the number one key. We'll get there. But like you said, it jumps off the page to shoot over 40% as a team, when probably many teams don't have a player that shoots enough shots to get 40%. Like maybe there'll be one who's like 1 for 2 and you're like 50%. But they have 4 players that shoot over 40%, and like 2 others that are right near it. And that's ridiculous as a team. And so I think that's an enormous factor into this game.
Yeah, those 4 players, Jared Butler, Davion Mitchell, Maceo Teague's just underneath 40%, but Adam Flagler is at 42.2% as well. Super impressive. And that's one of the ones that I'm going to harp on as well. If Baylor shoots well, I think Gonzaga could be in real trouble. Also, Baylor averages 16.9 assists per game. That's 12th in the country. And so I'm just really looking forward to seeing kind of exactly what you mentioned, the pace that Baylor tries to play with in this one. I think they can try and this is going to sound crazy, but I think if Baylor is able to play whatever style Gonzaga really wants to try and make that game be played at, if that makes any sort of sense. Like if Gonzaga really wants to slow it down, I think Baylor can work really well to get good shots, and they're that talented offensively with good guard play that they can get those shots. If Gonzaga wants to run and try and run Baylor out of good sets to get good threes and things like that, I think Baylor can run with them. And I don't know. I just think I think Baylor's offense might be a little bit more versatile. That might sound crazy, but that's just kind of the way I see it. And it's just going to be whether or not they can get enough stops and slow down Gonzaga's offense.
Yeah, I don't think that's crazy. I would say Gonzaga's got a better offense, but Baylor's can do things in different ways. Gonzaga's rarely slowed down, because when they want to run, they play better defense and then they run, or they get into the paint or run a quick pick and roll, and they've got a lot of quick hitters. Gonzaga is one of the best passing teams I've ever seen, but a lot of it comes in like large open spaces, and that's something that Baylor's faced a lot more tough tested defenses than Gonzaga has. And they've got some similar ones, like Kansas was beaten by both Baylor and Gonzaga, West Virginia as well. But at the same time, you run in Oklahoma, you run into all these teams and they know your systems as well. I think Baylor, that will factor into Baylor's advantage. If like Gonzaga wants to, I think Gonzaga's want to play faster and Baylor would want to play slower. At least mentally, that's how I would go about it if I'm Scott Drew and Mark Few. But I don't think it's a enormous advantage either way. Like if you're trying to slow it down, I don't think you take Gonzaga out of their thing. And if you try to speed it up, I don't think you take Baylor out of their rhythm too badly either. So I'm happy about that, because sometimes when you play the team that plays lightning fast and one plays super slow, one team really suffers.
It's really hard to talk Baylor without mentioning just how good and deep their guard play is. Jared Butler is a first-team All-American. Davion Mitchell is a third-team All-American and the National Defensive Player of the Year. Maceo Teague was on the All-Big 12 team, and Adam Flegler is a depth piece that they have there as well. Talk to me about the importance for these guards to really show up in this game for Baylor, because they're what really makes this team go in my eyes.
Yeah, absolutely. Baylor has the best backcourt in the country, and I've said that all year. Jared Butler and Davion Mitchell are exceptional, and Davion Mitchell's played, I would say, Johnny Juzang might have the claim for being the best player in the tournament so far, but Davion Mitchell is not far behind if he's not number one. And he's played exceptionally well. Jared Butler shoots over 40% from three, and he scores 17 a game. Was Big 12, all Big 12, first team All-American. And then Maceo Teague is the second leading scorer despite those two, and he shoots about 39% from three. And you have Adam Flegler, who shoots 43% from three off the bench, and he seems to just have this like timeliness to his buckets. Like whenever Arkansas started to make a run, Adam Flegler hit free throws when he hit a few threes. And the other thing is their defense, that we talked about, National Player of the Year defensively is Davion Mitchell, but Jared Butler has 2 steals a game. Maceo Teague guarded Moses Moody, who is going to be a lottery pick. He defended Quentin Grimes to 0 points in the first half, made it so the game was over. This is an elite defensive backcourt along with being an elite offensive backcourt.
So when you look at it that way, and how good their guard play is, you also have to talk about their bigs, and that is Mark Vital, Flo Thamba, and I'm going to let you take this one as well.
Jonathan Tchamwa Tchatchoua.
That man. These guys are talented, but they might not be as dynamic as some of the athleticism of the wings and Drew Timme is inside for Gonzaga. Talk to me, just if you were Scott Drew, talk me through your game plan of approaching a way to try and slow down Drew Timme, and with this depth that you have in your size, how do you kind of go about that? And do they have a chance of really slowing Drew Timme down? Because he's not necessarily enormous. Like I think he's what, like 6'10", Drew Timme is? Yeah, somewhere around there. So he's not necessarily ginormous, but he is very talented in his post moves, and he runs the floor really, really well. So talk to me on how you slow him down if you're Baylor defensively.
I'll be very intrigued to see what they do. If I am Scott Drew, I think the first thing that I'd do is I'd throw multiple bodies at him. You don't want to have one player get in foul trouble and be taken out of the game. And I also think one thing I do, this isn't necessarily defensively, but I think it'll play a factor into the game plan defensively, is when Matthew